Good morning, good afternoon, good night. Welcome back to my poorly lit bedroom, yet another angle in my poor Pippi Longstocking cosplay. Today I want to talk about feelings. Um, Normally when I have them, those rare unfortunate occurrences, I just kind of process them by talking out loud in my apartment or kind of going through the argument in my head. But since there have been a number of you who have been so lovely and kind to actually respond to the things I'm sharing and tell me your thoughts and feelings, I need to ask you a question and I genuinely want your honest opinion. Am I a book snob? Um, let's wind it back for a second. I always loved reading those end of year review lists. And I say reading because I'm thinking about back before I knew about BookTube, just people I was friends with on Facebook would post a status at the end of the year showing all the books they've read. But over time, these really started to grate on me and get on my nerves a bit because it felt very self-congratulatory, it felt competitive, and it felt a little smug. Now, I am projecting on words on a Facebook status, but the reason I bring this together to ask why am I, or am I, why am I, Freudian slip, am I a book snob, is because I always found my perspective of these lists varied depending on whether people read these books or listened to these books via audiobooks. Let me explain. First and foremost, I think audiobooks are absolutely wonderful. Whether you're someone with varying levels of ability, whether you're someone who likes to hear and read at the same time to process it better, if you're one of those people who actually likes to hear the author of a memoir tell their own story, I think audiobooks are a net positive overall, full stop. Where I get a little about them is there have been times where I have seen people how do I phrase this? Receive compliments for how well read they are, receive awe and admiration for finishing, Anna Karenina in 1 week, and then you come to find out that they listened to it while driving to work on double speed. And the story is the story, and the more ways that people can embrace and interact with fiction or nonfiction, the more ways that people can just experience art. Again, that's a net positive. Why does this get on my nerves? And I think it gets on my nerves because I have a competitive spirit. If I were to read 100 books in a year, I would actually have to sit down with the book or with the ebook on my phone and read it. Only focusing on that one thing, not multitasking, not speeding up and slowing down and rewinding, just reading. And that's because I don't really like audiobooks, personally, for me. I've tried the author memoir thing. I've tried listening while reading. I tried like a short story or a poem. I think the closest I got to enjoying it was with poems. But it's just not for me. It's not my thing. So if I wanted to hit this like elusive, illustrious marker of 100 books in a year, I would have to do it the old-fashioned way. And I think that's where my feelings are coming from. That if I wanted to, reap the social clout of saying I read 100 books in a year, I would have to read for hours and hours and hours and hours a week, and I could only do that. I couldn't listen to it while cleaning or listen to it while shopping. And I know this seems really small and petty because it is, but I want to talk about it because I've seen a lot of discourse around, do audiobooks count as real reading, and are audiobooks as like good for your brain as physical books? And I'm pretty ambivalent about those conversations overall. Again, 9.9 times out of 10, as long as people are experiencing the story, I'm happy. And for booktubers, most of the booktubers, I think all of them that I watch will do, a mid-year freakout tag. They'll do an end-of-year review. They'll do a rant review or a rave review. And whether or not they've read the book physically or listened to it on Audible never bothers me. Like it I don't care at all when I see that someone said, I read 7 books this month, 3 I listened to on Audible, 4 I read. So then why does it bother me when it comes to showcasing the big list at the end of the year? And also me as a reader, how do I let my own opinions affect how I talk to other people about how much I read? So I don't know if you watch my favorite Black children's book video. Probably not, because that's the least performing one. But I love children's books and I'm not gonna stop. So I read a lot of them. I very, very often I'm reading children's books. But when people ask me in real life, how much did you read this month? I'll say 3 or 4. not 6 or 8, because I'm not counting the 7 picture books I read. I'm not counting, these books that took 5 minutes to read and are mainly for pictures. And I say that not to compare audiobooks to children's books and how easy it is to consume the material, but I personally would feel like I was misrepresenting myself if I told people I read 7 or 8 books in a month, because that's not my natural reading cadence. I'm usually 2 to 4 at best, depending on the size of the books. And it also makes me think of when I see these end of year reviews where people had, whether or not it's 100, whether it's 50, 75, where people had really specific numeric goals, and suddenly you see that the books they're showing are getting thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner until they're basically pamphlets. I'm like, what is the purpose at that point? Like, if you're intentionally picking tiny books so you can hit a goal, like, what is the purpose of the goal? I know I am all over the place with this when it comes to tracking reading and how reading can be used as this kind of like social clout tool and audiobooks and children's books, but I feel like all of this is wrapped up in one. I mean, for people who are not consistent readers, I totally understand why you would track what you complete by book. You track it by book. But on BookTube, why don't we track by page? Because I clicked on videos where it says, oh, I only read 16 books this year, or I only read 20 books this year. And then you watch the video and it's like Fountainhead, Anna Karenina, War and Peace. Like, they're books, like they're this big. Why are you ashamed of that? Why do you feel bad about that? 16 books, no, does not sound as impressive as 100 books. But if we're going by pages, you are blowing most people out of the water. Why are we like this? Why am I like this? I know I started this by asking, am I a book snob? But I guess I'm really wondering, are we book snobs? Is that what this is about? I know it's not what it's about, but I don't know. I have a hard time piecing together all of these different things about reading is good, which I objectively believe. And anytime someone experiences a story, reading or listening, that's good, which I do believe. And why wouldn't you compliment people if you've noticed they've read a lot and you think that's impressive? You should. But then why do I feel like I'm misrepresenting myself if I don't distinguish between, okay, I read this many children's books, but this many like actual books, when if I get the same amount of joy and information and, lovely calm feeling from a children's book than a chapter book, what does it matter? Where did I get this weird neuroses from? And when it comes to people who are sharing the number of books they read for accolades, who are really doing it in a way that's like, look how much I read this year, it was super hard, I grinded through it, but I really love reading. And then again, you find out that half of these books, they're like, I remember I saw a comment on a Facebook status once that was like, oh yeah, like I didn't like catch all of it since I listened to it mainly on 2 or 3 times speed, but that's better than none at all. And yes, like, yeah, I mean, I think if I had to choose between, no book and 2/3, 4/5 of the book, I'd obviously choose that. But like, how are you gonna sit there and accept all these compliments and like, oh my gosh, wow, of how much you read in a year, when it is when you're not putting in as much effort as other people who are trying to reach the same goal? And I have never given myself the goal of 100 books a year, but I have absolutely emotionally given my impressed energy and then wanted to take it back when I found out all the details. Now, I can only really think of like 4 or 5 people who I know in real life who have done that whole, this is how much I read, and then once you dig in, they're like, oh, well, this, and I didn't actually finish, like all these like qualifiers. I think the fact that I'm tying it to all these other things reveals a deeper topic I want to explore about how and why we track reading, the way we track reading, and like, I mean, we're all nerds, right? Like, we're all nerds. That's why we do this. So what kind of like nerd, geek, dweeb hierarchy are we doing here when we talk about how much we've read and what we were reading? And I don't have a nice conclusion to this. I don't script out my videos, but I generally have kind of bullet points of what I want to say, especially when I'm talking about physical books. I want to make sure I hit something. But this is just a random chit chat. I would like your opinion on things. Do you think the way we track reading on BookTube is the best reflection of how much reading we're actually doing? I normally see by book. I know Goodreads provides pages, and some people do that as well, but would pages be a better way to track that? Do I have an obsession with tracking? I mean, maybe. I love data. Tell me why I care. Free therapy, please. Why do I care about how people track and how people don't. Why do I care if somebody else is getting compliments that I feel are potentially not entirely deserved because of the way they're representing their reading? Probably because I'm competitive and sensitive, but like, give me something else. Give me some other Freud theories. I hate sharing this part of myself. All of this chaos normally happens in my head, and then once I feel my opinion is at least cohesive and using all the punctuation marks, then I will share, hear feedback, and go back and process by myself. But seeing as I normally talk to myself or just think in my head anyway, doing it this way isn't that much weirder, because at least I'm talking to somebody now. Yeah, what do y'all think? And if the answer is you are overthinking, that is fine too. If you're wondering why everyone's favorite furry asshole did not make an appearance, it's because I had the good sense to actually close the door. Do I miss him? Yes. I think I'm just going to have to bring him back.